Gary's online, right? So. Yeah. Thank you, sir. I just witnessed what I thought. Bought me coffee. Most people won't. Ready? Good afternoon, everyone. Want to welcome everybody to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, September 20, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order. We acknowledge that we're in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Would you call the roll, Shelley, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mayor Scott,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Joseph,
Present.
Councillor Gould,
Present.
Councillor Gilroy,
Present.
Councillor Hotelling, Councillor Redmond, Councillor McCormick, Councillor Porter,
Present.
and Councillor Goodwin is joining us virtually.
Present.
There she
There we
is.
go. There she is. Great. Thank you, Shelley. So that brings us down to 2.1 on the agenda, approval of the agenda. So everyone would have a copy of the agenda. It was circulated. Ask for motion to approve it as presented, please. Moved by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Deputy Mayor Joseph. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded nay. Motion is carried. 2.2 approval of minutes. So the minutes for the June 21, 2023 regular committee of the whole meeting have been circulated. I'd ask for motion to approve them as presented, please. Moved by Councillor Gould, second by Councillor Hotelling. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded nay. Motion is carried. 2.3 Business Rising. Mr. Harrett's going to speak to the Business Rising, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Business Arising is at pages 11 and 12 of Council's information package. As is the custom, it's broken into a couple of buckets, and one is from the most recent committee of the whole, and the other is a few ongoing items. The vast majority of these items have been completed. So I'm at page 11. Second reading for rezoning at Sutherland's Lake is complete. Second reading rezoning on the Hansford Road property is complete. The approval of low income tax exemption, the approval of tax reduction exemption policy, both those items are complete. A couple of funding requests in conjunction with the Christie Smith Foundation are complete. Easy for me to say, Your Worship. I can hear you over there. The awarding of the water meters for Spring Hill portion of the utility is complete. Appointment of additional building officials. You recall we contracted with some outside building officials to help with backlog in permitting and inspection. That is complete. An adjustment of a historical deficiency in the Biggs Drive Water Association is complete. And the rates have been set with respect to that water system. The approval of the Property Reduction Advisory Council strategic plan had been added to a council agenda, so that part is complete. We've forwarded correspondence to the Property Valuation Services Corporation with respect to appeals and an inventory of appeals, of outstanding appeals. That is complete. Adding a discussion about a potential area rate in the Wallace area have been added to the July Committee of the Whole, so that is complete. And actually, there's an item on Council's agenda this afternoon to talk about that. And approval, ratification and approval of East Cumberland Lodge's bylaw amendment had been forwarded to Council for approval. So all of those items are complete. I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions before I move on to the last.
Any questions for Mr. Harrett on the action list so far? Councillor McCormick.
Briggs Drive. I thought there was something else that it was on the agenda for them about a generator or something for when the power went out. Is that something separate?
Your Worship. Yep. So a couple of things with the Biggs Drive water system. The municipality doesn't own it. We operate it pursuant to an agreement with the Biggs Drive Water Association. It's a homeowners association, essentially. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, a deficiency was generated that has been carried forward and never billed. We brought that forward to council to have that adjusted, written off, essentially. That was complete. With that behind us, we moved then to the setting of the rates for water service out there. And council has approved that. Prior to setting the rates with respect to the Biggs Drive water service, we had a discussion with the folks at the representing the association to clarify the situation with respect to the generator. They wanted to purchase a generator. We wanted to make sure that they didn't wish to have the generator included in the rates that were being set for usage. They confirmed in writing that they didn't. And so council moved on and set those rates. Subsequent to that, we were approached by the president of the association to ask about financing the generator. A little bit of back and forth with them, and the association has decided to internally finance the purchase of the generator. I'm not sure. I believe it has been installed now. I believe it's in. I believe it's in operation. That is separate and apart from anything that we're doing for them financially. We haven't financed the generator. They are internally financing. That answer your
Yeah,
question.
thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Worship.
Any other questions to hear report so far? None, carry on, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Page 12, ongoing action list, 4 items, jurisdictional review of bylaw enforcement policies regarding dangerous and unsightly premises and the draft of a policy for review. I can report that Director Cole and I met earlier this week, or maybe earlier this week, I think, and talked about that. He has done a bunch of work in terms of gathering similar policies and procedures from other municipalities around the province. And next step is to draft a bit of a policy for council's consideration. So I think that work is fairly well in hand. There was direction for staff to acknowledge the letter and engage with Village of Pugwash with respect to a service extension request that they had made. We wanted to ensure that we had determined the exact bounds of the service extension because the initial letter was a little unclear. So we've done that. I know that Director Walkress and some of his staff have done a bunch of work again on the various aspects of the request and broken it up into various pieces. And so we'll be having a conversation with council about that soon. I think we're probably almost ready to have that conversation about length of extension and number of connections and capital costs and contributions and that sort of thing. So that's where that sits. Surplus municipal property strategy. I know that that Director Boone has been working on that, and if there are any questions, so we can get an update from him. And the same would be with respect to the marketing levy. Both of those files are ongoing. So happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions from Mr. Maher? Seeing none, into these.
Yeah, sure. So just a couple of other items to bring council up to date on. Just following on the policing review and the results of the policing review. You recall that we proceeded with the RCMP as a preferred proponent with respect to the provision of policing services, and the direction of council was for Mayor Scott and I to seek a meeting with the provincial leadership of the RCMP and Department of Justice. So after some back and forth, it literally took 6 weeks to get it arranged. But he and I are traveling to Halifax next week to meet with the Minister of Justice and the Assistant Commissioner of the RCMP. So that's on the 28th, I think. So hopefully that'll get that file rolling. So we're looking forward to that. Also follow up on one of our significant priorities is the fire service. And as council is aware, moving forward toward the implementation of the hub model of the fire protection. And part of that is investing in both equipment and buildings. And in the capital budget, new fire stations were approved for Spring Hill and Parsboro. Subsequent to that initial approval, we brought forward a request that was approved by council to increase the budget in total for those stations. And I'm happy to report that I think tomorrow, perhaps Friday, the RFP for design build of those fire stations will be hitting the street. So that's good news, and we'll see what sort of results we get from the market. The only other thing that I can report on is is that we're moving forward with a pilot with LED roadway lighting on video surveillance in 5 or 6 or 7 locations around the municipality. We're going to try it for 6 months at no cost, and then we'll bring the results back. So that's where we sit, Your Worship. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Harrop regards to this report? Seeing none, thank you, sir. So we'll move on to 2.4, public hearings and presentations. So we have with us today, we have folks from Miller Solid Waste who are here to talk to us about Miller Solid Waste routes. Isaac Smith's here and Jeff Trevor. Jeff is the district manager of Miller Waste System. So I'd ask you gentlemen to come forward and maybe just introduce yourselves, and then floor is yours. And just leave some time at the end if you wouldn't mind for questions. I'm sure we'll have some questions from councilors in regards to your presentation, but please, sir, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. And I'm happy if it's your worship's preference to answer questions as we go along, whatever.
I think if I could, I would suggest maybe you go through your presentation.
Right. Just
to ensure you get your full presentation in, and we'll have some questions at the end. Otherwise, you may not get your presentation complete.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I always get excited when I have a captivated audience and we get to talk about garbage. I'm Jeff Traver. I'm the district manager for Atlantic Canada for Miller Waste Systems. I've been with the corporation for 24 years. Had various roles, starting out as a compost supervisor, working into I ran the recycling facility in the Halifax, operations manager, and then I always say they couldn't find anybody else, so they made me district manager about 15 years ago. I'm very pleased to be joined with Isaac Smith, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Isaac Smith. I've been with the company roughly 2 years. Roof supervisor here in Cumberland County and town of Amherst. Yeah.
This is Isaac's first presentation.
Yeah, well, relax, Isaac. We're easy. We're good.
So Isaac's
you.
also a volunteer firefighter,
Yeah.
so intimate with the community and,
Yeah,
and the areas, and does an amazing job for us.
Great.
So we're here to talk to you today. I get to do my little thing with, we rehearsed that earlier.
I should have practiced.
So we're here to talk to you today just about the upcoming changes to the collection of recycling, organics, and garbage. Okay, we're not going to be making this change until I would estimate April, when our new equipment arrives. But we want to get in front of you as early as we can so that we can start educating the residents so that we minimize the challenges that will occur. We want to talk about why the change. So some of the challenges that we've encountered over the last 10 years and how we're going to address some of the concerns that we've heard from council and from the residents so that we try to minimize those moving forward. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how we did it. Did we just take a dartboard and throw some stuff at a map? No, we had a fairly extensive methodology. We've done this at a lot of other jurisdictions as well. So we've got a lot of experience. We've used a lot of GIS data and looked at your kilometers per day and your kilometers of road to determine the best way to collect the waste to ensure that we have consistency for the residents and sort of a balanced collection cycle for our drivers and helpers. We're going to look at the maps. We're going to look at where we are today just to orientate and where we're going to go or what we're suggesting. Again, I mentioned education, notification to the residents. So we're in September. We're not looking for a change probably till April. Again, depending on truck delivery, and we'll work with Director Walkress and update council on as we get more from our suppliers. But we want to get out in front of this and educate as many of the residents we can so that the change is coming. And you guys, I know, are the front line, and you guys are going to take the phone calls. So try to minimize that impact to all of you. We want to talk a little bit about some challenges that we're facing out on the route. I know I've had the opportunity to talk to some councillors about this before, and certainly mentioned it to Director Walkress. Talk about spring cleanup. I know that's near and dear to many residents' heart. But again, just wanted to take the opportunity to talk to you and give you some perspective from our side. And most importantly, we want council input. So we think we worked with staff, obviously, to make these changes, and we're going to talk about how we made them. But again, there may be some things, and again, Justin's familiar with the area. There may be some areas that you say, oh my God, this community has to be with this community. So this certainly isn't cast in stone. And if there are changes that people would like to see, we're certainly open to that. Next slide. So I think everybody knows who we are, so I'm going to be really brief on this. We've done your service for the last 20 years. Well, the last, I guess, since 2011, since Miller acquired PBS and TSL. So I'm going to skip over this slide. I'm sure everybody read it. This is what our current collection cycle is today. So each color represents a day. So I am colorblind, so I'm going to say, top left of the screen, is Monday, top right is Tuesday. That's sort of your cottage lanes. That's where we have the biggest challenge in terms of seasonal residents to date. So in the summertime, sort of May 24th through Thanksgiving, that's a 14-hour day for our collection crews. In the wintertime, it's a 6-hour day. And so if it's a 14-hour day, we miss landfill, the next day's challenge. We've got Monday and Tuesday, heavy days back to back. So it causes some challenges. It causes late collection for the residents. We have had on occasion the inability to service and finish collection. So when we look at the new map, you're going to see some differences in those areas, and it's to address those concerns. Next question or next slide. So the benefits of the days, benefit of the change, and again, we've talked a little bit about this, is to balance the days. So we may not have the same number of homes on each day, but we take in consideration the number of kilometers that we travel. You have a very large geographic county. And so we may have a high kilometer traveled. We may travel 500 kilometers in a day and only collect 500 homes. But it takes the same amount of time as it does to collect 2,000 homes in the town of Amherst and travel 50 kilometers in close proximity to the landfill. So those types of things were considered. We also know that you have a tremendous amount of growth, especially in the cottage collections. And I know you have a lot of housing developments on the horizon as well. So trying to leave some room in those areas to allow for expansion in the coming years. We want to have consistent hours for our staff. So again, we've got an amazing group of people employed by Miller, and they are dedicated, but their wives or spouses are not overly happy when they come home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So having a balanced day each day is going to allow them a better work environment. It's going to be easier to attract people. It's going to minimize WCB claims. It's going to minimize safety. Because the guys aren't tired and working 14-hour days and then coming in to do it all over again. Reduction of carbon footprint. So right now, we're passing each area every week. We're going to be sending a larger number of trucks, but less overall. So we're going to have less trucks on the street collecting waste. Not only is there reduction in carbon footprint, but you're also benefiting from a cost reduction. So recall, when this was passed, you went with the alternate collection, which was lower than the traditional way. So there's a win-win to the residents in the county. Ease to the residents. So again, I've mentioned we've done this in other jurisdictions. Right now, I've talked to counselors and they've had residents call and they said they didn't pick up my recycling. Well, it was on garbage week, and that's why it may not have been picked up. So now it's either garbage week with garbage, organics, recycling, or it's not. And so it's going to be a lot easier for the residents. They just put everything out of the curb. They don't have to worry about what goes where, and our guys will sort it. I will note that there will be 2 trucks going back past each location. One truck will do garbage organics, one truck will do recycling. So you will get a phone call in the first week of collection and say they missed my recycling or they missed my organics. Typically, our recycling truck goes ahead. They go quicker than the garbage and organics. So our recycling truck will go first, followed by our garbage and organics. Balancing the tonnage at the landfill. So again, we have heavy days, we have light days. consistency at the landfill is better for them, coupled with the landfill has very short hours. So the landfill is open from 7 in the morning till 3 at night. If we don't hit landfill by 2:55, we can't dump off, which means we start the next day at the landfill at 7. And by the time our last truck leaves, he might not be departing the landfill until 8 or 8:30, which means we're getting on the route late. By having a more consistent time, it's going to ensure that we're at the landfill at the end of the day. And again, make it easier and better for the residents and for us to ensure we get the stuff off the street in a timely manner. I know this is hard to believe, but occasionally we have truck breakdowns. By having smaller zones, it's easier to supervise. And if we do have a truck breakdown, we have redundancy in the system to allow us to pick up the slack. In other words, if we have a garbage truck breakdown, we can finish off recycling and send them back to help out with garbage. So because it's a smaller geographic area, it's a lot easier to cover. Next slide. So how did we get there? We wanted to balance the tonnages. Right now we have a light week and a heavy week, the heavy week being garbage organics, the light week being recycling. So a week ago we were on garbage organics. We were finishing 7, 8 o'clock at night. We're on recycling this week. Same day, we finished at 3 o'clock. Some of that was because of the hurricane and we had less residents in the cottage areas. But my point is there's a significant difference between the 2 weeks. So by balancing it and having garbage organics recycling on the same day, we're going to have consistency in our weeks, making it better, again, hitting the landfill, more consistency for our drivers, better for the residents. We've also looked at the kilometers traveled and homes collected. So again, you'll see in a few slides, you'll see days where we're collecting 2,000 homes, we're traveling 50 kilometers, days that we're traveling 800 kilometers, I'm exaggerating, and collecting 50 homes. One of the things that I've talked about is the seasonal residents. So right now we have Monday, Tuesday, 2 days, all of the cottages on sort of the Pugwash, Wallace area. We're going to break that into 4. So we're going to have cottage collection done over 4 days. And again, that's to make it easier to have more consistency year round. And the collection areas are going from 5. So again, we have 5 collection zones Monday to Friday. We're going to go to 10. So we're going to have, so right now we do 5, we do 1 week organics, 1 week garbage. So you're 10, but we're going to have 10 collection areas smaller, and we're going to have recycling and organics done the same day. So we'll go by one area Monday, week 1, and then it won't see collection again for a 2-week cycle. Next slide. A picture is worth a million words. Again, not the greatest chart for a colorblind guy, but there is a legend, and you may have some in your package, but you can see Monday, week 1, Monday, week 2, okay? And the color corresponds with that. So you can see Monday 1, whatever color that is, corresponds, I think it's the star area, I believe. And so these are going to be our proposed collection areas, and again, work with Director Wackress and staff to sort of fine tune this. So there's already been a number of back and forths with the county and Miller on how to do. Next slide. So again, this is just a little bit of how we got here. So you can see we have the days along the left. So week 1, week 2, the total homes that will be collected per day. So you can see there's a range of Monday, day 1, 2,000 homes, down to a low of Friday, day 2, 1,100. Now you can see a corresponding kilometers of roadways. Mondays we're doing 241, a little bit less on the Friday. So we try to balance that. Friday, we also, have a tired workforce. They want to get home. So we try to get them home a little earlier in the day, get them off the road. And so we try to make Fridays a little bit lighter. But you can see how, for example, when Thursday one, we have lower homes and higher kilometers. I'm a spreadsheet guy, so I'm happy to answer lots of questions about this when you have them. We've also looked at our distance to landfill. So again, when we're really close to the landfill, it's easy to do a second load. If we're down an Advocate, it's really hard to go back at the end of the day. Next slide. Again, this is just the same map with some labels on it. So you can see Monday, low homes, low kilometers, Monday, high homes, average kilometers. And then we go down to Tuesday, which I can't see on there, somewhere over there. And so and again, what we try to do is go light day, heavy day, light day, heavy day for our guys. So if they're in Amherst, for example, it's a heavy day, they're pulling 20 tons, 25 tons. We'd like to balance that the next day down in Advocate where there's a little more kilometers, less homes to collect, just so that their bodies have, we don't wear them out. Next slide. Education, again, worked with Director Walkress on this, but education is the absolute key. And so with staff, we've developed these routes, and pending council endorsement, we have effectively completed the reroute analysis. Again, not cast in stone. We've got lots of time. We've implemented 10 months before, so we have 10 months before the implemented change. So social media, I know there's a number of media people here, getting the word out so that residents know what to expect. Start informing residents now. We talked to Director Walkress. Can we put it out on water bills? Can we put it out on tax bills? You have an amazing app, Recollect, that we can start notifying people. Town halls, I know you guys meet with your constituents on a regular basis. If there's anything that we can do to help facilitate that, barbecues, whatever it might be, certainly happy to do whatever we can to assist. Why aren't we starting earlier? So why don't we start it now? So I just, again, quickly speak to equipment lead times are significant at this point. We used to have chassis on the ground. We'd put an order into International or Freightliner Mac. They'd have us a chassis within a couple weeks, 3 months, a month or two at the bodybuilders. We have a truck within 3 months. We are looking at 18 to 20 month lead times right now. There's a bunch of stuff going on in the industry, so there's a lot of trucks being ordered. So we're 18 months out. So and we're adding more trucks, we're adding more mini splits. So we can't make these changes until that new equipment arrives. Next question or slide. Some of the challenges that we're dealing with, and I heard it from some counselors today. So probably the same challenges that the fire department or the ambulance are facing is some of these cottage lanes are really getting infilled. So what was great 10 years ago, the trees are growing and they're getting more and more narrow. Some of the streets we have, our pickup truck mirrors, not our big trucks, are actually hitting the thing. So I know you'll get calls from counselors, but anything that we can do to help get those lanes widened out a little bit. If there's new lanes being developed, I'd recommend that they have, sort of a DOT spec. It would be great to have a turnaround at the end because we get into these lanes and we can't turn around. So right now we have backup cameras on our fleet. We have, but we can't even spot backing up because there's not like our guy can't walk behind the truck because the guy can't see him in the mirror because he can't walk out to the edge. So we have backup cameras, but you can imagine, we're going down lanes. They've got golf carts, little kids and 12 years old having a grand time, and they love to see the garbage truck going by. And so it is challenging for our guys. So we'd rather be driving down, turning around and then coming back out. So I know some of these changes can't happen on private lanes today, but certainly if there is new lanes being approved, that would be wonderful. And if it is something that we can look at just to make it a little safer, turnaround lanes at the end of lanes. People don't like us turning in their driveways, so they put, rocks in front and that sort of thing. But anything we can do to facilitate cooperation or make it a little easier for us to navigate these streets safely would be welcomed. And I know I've talked to Justin about this. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard it, so thank you. And then the only other thing that we're going to be doing fiber, which is in clear bags, and we're going to be doing waste, which is in clear bags. So when the education goes out there, you're going to want, recycling on one side of the curb and garbage on the other side. And again, it just facilitates it easier and makes it easier for our guys. Recycling guy goes by, he looks like garbage. And if it's piled under the garbage, the recycling is going to get missed. So again, in the education, that's one thing in the past. When you have the same week collected, that's one challenge that we'll have to address. The next slide. Hopefully we got time for questions.
Do so. Thank you. Thanks, Trevor, and thanks, Isaac. Questions or comments for our guest, Councillor Redmond?
Thank you for the snickerdoodle.
I have three questions. Large items now are picked up on garbage, like people can put a mattress or whatever. When we go to this, is that still going to be allowed?
To the counselor through the worship, yes.
Okay. Now, the only issue I see is the change of pickup days, because for over 20 years, everybody knows that their garbage is picked up on a Tuesday or a Monday or whatever. And I see that the majority of the chart has changed in garbage pickup day. And I think that's going to be our number one issue, is people getting used to that. But you did speak on advertising and getting that out there quicker, but
Yeah.
we're still going to have an issue with that, I think.
Through your worship, you're right. It is going to be a challenge. What we typically find is the first week is a little crazy. So if we get ahead of it and we educate as many people as we can, and their neighbor may not know about the change, but they'll see the other neighbor's garbage and everything else. So that's going to help. I'm not going to say it's perfect. And what we can do is if a resident does happen to miss their collection, we can, what Justin often calls me and says, Jeff, can you pick up double the next cycle or something like that? So we'll work through those challenges. But usually after that first cycle happens, everybody sort of catches on. We're hoping to start this before cottage collection, so sort of before that May 24th. So we can get a few collections under our belt with the local residents, and then they will train the seasonal residents by, the seasonal residents will sort of see it on the curb. So that's sort of the timeline that we're hoping for to try to mitigate that. But I recognize it will be an issue. I agree.
The last thing is, you mentioned a barbecue. When is it? When can we come?
Isaac is an absolutely wonderful chef. So we are happy to have a barbecue. Yeah, as long as you bring the snickerdoodles.
No problem. Roger, that's your.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Redmond.
Yep.
Anyone else? Any questions, comments? Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, just a couple questions. So one, I know the beach lane is an issue. We usually know the garbage truck is coming 15, 20 minutes before it gets there, because they back down the whole lane and make a 90-degree turn and they go, because it's a dead end and there's no place to turn at the other end.
Yep.
I often wondered why they didn't maybe use smaller trucks just to run down the lane, throw the garbage on, and load it on the top of the lanes, if that would save you time. But I know compost would be an issue maybe there, but.
So we do have what we call a mini split, which is about a half-size vehicle. And we do have two pickup trucks running. One pickup does organic, the other pickup does garbage with cages.
Right.
And then we empty into rear loaders.
Okay.
So we do that where we have to, but it is an extremely inefficient way to collect waste.
Yeah.
And it translates into higher cost per home to the residents. And I think we just have to balance, like if we have a new development going in, balance the costs of putting in the proper infrastructure. So does that answer your?
Yes, it does. Yeah, no, I was just making that as a suggestion.
Yeah.
The other question I had is, and I mentioned it a couple of years ago, because I've received several complaints. about Monday pickups because it's the most interfered day,
Mhm,
most holidays and all that. So we get the most complaints from them. And of course, a lot of them are in my district.
mhm,
So I mentioned a couple of years ago when we negotiated a 1-year contract with you guys, an extension,
mhm,
to the council that maybe we'd look at switching someone else on Mondays, you know,
mhm.
for do a 5-year cycle, whatever the case may be. Anyway, then I mentioned it again last year and we put the RFP out for the 5-year contract.
Mhm.
So I'm going to mention it one more time, just so that my constituents know that I am bringing it forward,
Did
but
we change any of the?
no, the Monday's still all that, the Tidnish Road all around the Amherst area. And that Tyndall Road, yeah, sorry, yeah. And that I can understand their frustrations because it does get interfered the most.
Mhm,
And we talked about the confusion it's gonna be by switching days and stuff.
mhm.
They forget to put it out on Saturday. See, it's usually the Saturday before, I believe. And so they're not thinking about the holiday on Monday. Next thing you know, the truck's gone by and they say, I didn't put my garbage out. It's gonna become even worse when you miss your garbage because now you're gonna have it for 2 more weeks. So could possibly have your garbage for a month.
Mhm.
Essentially. So I just wonder, is that a possibility? I know you got your graph there, but looking at that.
So through,
Yep, please, Charlie.
your worship to the counselor, understand the issue. We did look at going, to a 4-day week collection cycle, but we would have had to have such a much larger fleet to do the same amount of work in 4 days. It would have been cost prohibitive. We would have had very poor utilization on our equipment. There are jurisdictions that do a Tuesday to Friday cycle. Town of Truro is one of them. So if there is a snow day or something like that, but it wasn't conducive to the Cumberland area. When we did the analysis, we looked at trying to disrupt the minimum amount of residents. So sort of the large population bases is where we tried to stay the same. I'm certainly happy to speak with Director Walkress about that. But again, it is an issue, and I understand that. The one good thing is that garbage is every other week and recycling is every other week. So the amount of Mondays will be halved. You know what I mean? So it will, so we'll have a little bit of some of the resident, each resident isn't going to be impacted. It depends the way the counter falls, but hopefully we'll split up the misery a little bit, but point taken.
So my suggestion really wasn't go to the 4-day week.
No, I know.
Switch a 1 to 2.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping for. But the last thing is, and I brought it up, so this be something that maybe Justin can have that conversation with and see if it's feasible or whatnot. The last thing is the bins. If you've got a garbage bin at the end of your driveway, you talked about the recyclables being on one side and the garbage on the other. I leave mine in my bin and they come and take out whatever they're collecting that week. Is that still, are they still gonna do that or?
Absolutely. So, typically what we find is people don't, I'm not saying everybody, but garbage week, they'll put their garbage in the garbage bin, and then recycling week, they'll put the recycling in the bin. There is a few bins that, just put everything in as they go, but that can attract, pests and rodents and that sort of thing. So yes, we will go through that. If it becomes an issue anywhere, we'll certainly let you guys know. And I would just, encourage the residents, like if they have garbage on one side and recycling it, like it doesn't have to be a wall in the middle or whatever, but it's very difficult for, like, our recycling guy will most likely be going through first. And if he looks in the bin, they're not gonna probably pick through the whole thing. I mean, if there's an address that's flagged, we'll definitely, look at it. But they sort of look and, it's pretty easy to figure it out, but yes, to answer your question.
And I agree 100% that the education is gonna be the biggest part. I've already had this conversation with some people and I said, well, they're gonna pick everything up. Just gonna come once every 2 weeks. And I said, well, I'm gonna have my garbage for 2 weeks. I said, you got your garbage for 2 weeks now. And they said, oh yeah, you're right. So, I mean, it'll take a while for people to catch.
Take a cycle.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gould, Deputy Mayor Joseph, then Councillor O'Telling.
Thank you, your worship. Thank you very much for the briefing, Jeff. Isaac, thank you for your service as a volunteer firefighter. Question I have is how soon can we start getting this literature and education out to the public?
Through your worship to the counselor or deputy mayor. Once we have endorsement from council, it is the intent of Director Walkrest to start disseminating this information as quickly as possible. I'm not sure when your billing cycles are for water, but these are things that residents get. They open every single one. And if we can get them in as many mailing lists, you know, with a big sign, changes are coming, we will minimize the disruption. And the fact that we're so far ahead of this, I think gives us a real advantage to minimize disruption down the road.
Thank you, your worship.
Deputy Mayor Joseph, great, thank you. Councillor O'Telling.
Thank you. I just would like to add now to Councillor Gould's concern, because now I'm in a Monday collection and in the cottage area. So my concern is that if they don't know about the Saturday, then they don't pick it up on the Monday, then it sits there for the full week, especially if it's cottagers that are from away. That definitely becomes a big issue for those types. So I don't know if there's a seasonal thing that can be looked at as an option, but I know that's gonna come up, so.
Sure. Through your worship to the
Yep.
counselor, yeah, no, we can take a look at it. Hopefully, cottages are normally there on the weekend. So, you know, a lot of times they're coming up Friday afternoon, leaving Sunday evening. So hopefully, you know, on the holidays, they're actually going to be able to get the garbage out when they're there. So we hoped that would minimize the disruption to the residents. Why can't we work on the holiday? We do that in other areas, is the landfill is closed, right? So we can't dump off the material. And so that's why we can't work on the holidays. Again, something that we can certainly continue to talk about with staff to see if we can make changes in the future. But I understand your concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Telling. Anyone else? Jeff, just one quick, if you could. So I'm assuming you probably face the same HR issues that every other organization, including us, are facing today.
We have no HR issues.
I'm sure you don't. Thank you. Private lanes, I can't imagine that's going to, I think that's going to be a real challenge for you. Trying to, access travel, private lanes, growth in that out and how you deal with that. The only thing I wanted to ask was this. So presently, if someone's garbage and or recyclables are rejected, gets a sticker on it, it's rejected. So in the new world, will everything be rejected, or just which one of the piles is rejected? Maybe Isaac can answer. I don't know, but I'm just wondering if it rejects all. Thank you.
Mayor, we want to use stickering as an educational tool. And so typically what we see, if we have 3 bags of recycling that are commingled with paper and containers, we'll sticker 1 bag and take the other 2, so that they understand that there's an issue, but we're not sticking them with all that material. We will only sticker the bag that has an issue, and we will try to minimize the impact to the residents.
Great, thank you. So there are other questions. Jeff and Isaac, want to thank you very much for being here today. Councilor Redmond always says, if you want to fill this place, just start talking about garbage and you can usually pack the place. It's a big issue with everyone, but I think your point about getting out ahead of this early, education will be really important. Change is hard for all of us, but I think we're onto something good here. Something council decided in regards to the way the garbage will be collected in the future, and it benefits us financially, and I think it benefits in all the ways you said as well. So thank you both for being here today. Thanks for the great work you do. I personally think you do a wonderful job. We see these guys out. We talk about this all the time. These guys out in the snow and the rain and and some of these garbage bins. Watched one my wife and I watched one the other day. Their young guy was trying to lift the top out of it and it was broken. Here he's struggling to get this top off so you get the garbage out. And I'm thinking it's got to be tough, eh? It's a tough job.
They're an amazing group of people.
They are. So
yeah. Thank you for
so thank you folks very much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here today. Really appreciate this.
No, appreciate it. And I'll certainly pass your kind words on to our staff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That brings us down to organizational policy bylaw items, 3.1 carbon surcharge policy repeal. Mr. McCracken, you're going to speak to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. So at a recent senior management meeting, we reviewed the carbon surcharge fund policy. I guess the impetus for this, or the catalyst for this, was when directors submit a travel claim. There's a $5 carbon surcharge taken off our travel claim every month. And, you know, all fine and good, but I thought I'd do a little digging just and look into what exactly this carbon surcharge was. So brought it to the management committee meeting and we had a good discussion. And I'll outline what the carbon surcharge fund is. And it's and then there's a motion in your package for council to consider. So the carbon surcharge fund was established around 8 years ago. The objective of the policy, so it's a policy of council, is to support small scale initiatives to help local nonprofits reduce the energy consumption, thus reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The money is collected by senior management and councillors, councillors as well, I forgot, and by deducting $5 as a carbon surcharge from each travel claim submitted. All money collected is placed in a fund, and the intent of the policy is to award the money collected annually to one organization, a nonprofit in the community, assist with green projects. So as of the end of June of this year, we have amassed a little over $3,100 in the fund over a span of 8 years. During this time, no money has been dispersed. The administrative time required to implement the policy as per policy appears to be an obstacle. To collect and track funds, advertise and review applications, hold committee meetings, make selections, and staff feel the policy is not being implemented, and council should consider repealing it. Although the policy has not been a priority, climate change work has been, as demonstrated through the list of projects that are in the attached CDR, including solar PV systems, utility scale solar, photovoltaic electrical generating facility, geothermal project, clean energy financing program, Northumberland Straight Storm Surge Study, doing some work on identifying potential sites for electric vehicle charging stations. And over the last couple of years, we have, through our grants to organizations, we've supported around over $73,000 to organizations for energy efficient projects such as heat pumps and retrofitting buildings to make them more energy efficient and so on. So we are doing quite a bit of work in this regard. So I'll leave it at that, and there's a motion in your package for consideration.
Thank you. So the recommended motion is that council forward approval of repeal of the carbon surcharge fund policy and direct staff to allocate the balance of the fund to a local nonprofit organization to assist with a green energy project as part of the 2024-2025 grants to organizations process. So I'd like to make that move by Councillor McCormick, sorry, second by Councillor Gilroy. Any comments, questions, thoughts, Mr. McCracken, about this issue? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. 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 Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. That brings us down to business issues 4.1, date of October Committee of the Whole. Mr. McCracken.
Thank you, Your Worship. The October 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting is scheduled during the same time as the fall AMANS conference. And so the Committee of the Whole meetings are normally the third Wednesday of the month. Several employees are registered for the conference, which takes place that same week, creating a scheduling conflict for several staff members. including probably 5 of us here in the room tonight. The association holds 2 conferences per year. These are the primary professional development opportunities for several of our staff members in the administration and finance departments. Should council approve changing the date for the October meeting, notice of the meeting change will be provided to the public on the municipality's website, social media accounts, and shared with local media. There's a recommendation for council in your package.
Thank you. So the recommended motion is that council at the September 27th regular council meeting, consider a motion to reschedule the October 2023 committee of the whole meeting from the 3rd Wednesday of the month to the 2nd Wednesday of the month. Someone like to make that motion? Moved by Deputy Mayor Joseph, second by Councillor Porter. Any questions or comments in regards to the agenda item? Councillor Redmond, please.
Our policy still reads that we meet the 1st and the 3rd Wednesday of every month. Should we not be looking at changing that policy on the books? Because anybody that looks it up sees that we meet 1st and the 3rd.
Great. Thank you.
Your worship, I'm happy to bring revisions forward to reflect our current practice and have a discussion with them. So we've talked about that, and so happy to do that.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I know there's a process to cancel meetings.
Yep.
And we went through this because of, some development agreements we needed to get through in July. So we all know what we did there. And I think it's really the appropriate thing to do. It's just that we need to reflect it in our policy. And I agree 100%. So that's great. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call for question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minded nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. McCracken. 4.2 Wallace area rate. Ms. Hurdle, our Director of Finance, I believe is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a memo in your package. There was a request received in June from the Wallace Area Community Center by Councillor Redmond for the county to assess the feasibility of a special area levy to be contributed to the operational expenses of the hall in Wallace area. We're looking for a couple things today. We're looking for direction, essentially. So I have some information in the package. So the letter was sent to Councillor Redmond. It was brought to the meeting in June, and council gave staff direction to compile the information for just that area at that meeting. So we have done that. The requested information was compiled. It took approximately 1 full day of staff time between the planning department and the finance department. Doesn't include the time and cost to get the information mapped in our accounting software SAP, so that the area rate can actually be added to the bills, to the tax bills. The approximate cost of that would be $3,400 to $3,600, plus some staff time on the county side working with SAP and testing to ensure it's working correctly. All of these administrative costs could potentially be recovered from the area rate if implemented. In the discussions in June, it was suggested that this might be an initiative that may be rolled out on a larger scale. With 22 polling districts, this would mean about 20 full days of staff time plus the additional SAP cost. Important to note that if we were remapping all of the electoral boundaries, that each would not necessarily cost $3,400 to $3,600. So it's not times 20 for that, but it would be more than that 34 to 36. The District 4-1 boundaries do not completely align with property boundaries. So the properties in the assessment that we did were any properties that have their central point in District 4.1. So the central point of the property in that district. We thought that was the best measure to use so that if we did roll it out to a bigger initiative, there would be less chance of something being duplicated because there's only one central point on each property. Residential and commercial properties were included in the calculations, but exempted and resource properties were excluded from the calculations. And it's important to note that this analysis was done based on the electoral boundaries as requested. If those parameters change, such as providing a specific list of addresses or changing the parameters in some way, there would be a larger administrative burden. So all that to say this. So the properties that have their central point in District 4.1 include residential assessments of 138 million and commercial assessments of 28 million. A 1 cent per $100 of assessed value area rate on these assessments would amount to additional property taxes of about 16,600. This is an estimate. The actual will be different as it would be based on the next assessment roll, which doesn't come out until December of this year. We believe this estimate is reasonably close, but could change significantly depending on assessment changes. Financial implications. So if the area rate was implemented by council, the property taxes charged to District 4.1 residents would increase. This would increase the revenue to the municipality and would then be granted to the Wallace Area Community Center Society for the hall operating expenses. There's no environmental implications. So your alternatives, we're looking for direction that if you wanted this implemented as part of the 24-25 budget process to include an area rate for District 4.1 for the purpose of paying a grant to the Wallace Area Community Center Society as an item for discussion and approval. Or we could not implement the area rate with the budget discussions. Or we would also be looking for direction if you wanted a wider analysis by all district polling area. There are attachments there as well, which was just the initial memo from June, as well as the initial request from Wallace Area in your package. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions, comments, Councillor Red, please.
And if I say anything in this little speech that I've done up, I'm not, you do a marvelous job. I want to first take note that the Wallace Area 4.1 does not know that the trustees were looking into this. The Wallace Community Hall is suffering, and they were looking for information so they could find a way to move forward. So I don't want the people of Wallace to think that this is a done deal, okay? And it's something that they're happy when I spoke with them this morning, that the numbers that are there are giving them a good basis to base their decision on. When we did start, I take objection to the point that we are going to charge our constituents for staff time. The constituents originally are paying for staff, and if the constituents ask for information, there should be not a charge to them. When Oxford School and Brookdale schools had a levy put on their schools because they needed big gyms, there was no issue in getting the catchment areas for those schools, and there was no charge to the school board or to the individuals that were organizing the bigger gym. So I take real objection to us even considering charging anybody for any information from the county. I think as we move forward, we're going to have to sit down as a council and go over what we're going to do, because I see problems if we say that we're going to do this across the board. We have to set out what is a community center, because we're going to have so many people trying to jump on the bandwagon of getting a tax rate, if I explained that properly. Right now, we know that Wallace has a community center. They're looking at the possibility of adding a tax levy, and it might be more than the 1 cent, it might be 2 cents, or it might not be anything at all. The community may come together and find another way to do this. But as we move forward, I think it's important that we set guidelines on what is a community center. And thank you, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Redmond. Any other questions or comments or thoughts or questions for Amy around So obviously, Amy, this will be something that the council will take some time to think about, but so there's actually three options. One is the way that you actually determine now what the cost could be based on the numbers you presented. Second part would be, the other way would be a full district allocation. And then another option could possibly be for the full municipality, maybe not even by district, but just as a municipality, as a council. I think Councillor Gilroy brought this up at a previous meeting. You know, all the community centers and that, you know, all the community centers are struggling on two fronts: volunteers and the ability to raise money to survive. And communities have to decide if they want these or not. So the other option might be is a district-wide levy, however we want, or, you know, on the tax rate that gets dispersed once council decides who's a community center and how you decide that, how that money actually gets dispersed between them. That would be the simplest way for the accounting part of it and your part, would it not? If council decided to go that way?
Yeah,
Is that-
it would. We already have mapping in SAP based on the districts and based on countywide, obviously. If we change that, that's what takes the additional mapping in order to add it to the tax bills. So if we were assessing an area rate based on countywide or by district, it would already be mapped. So it would just be a matter of adding that levy.
Great, thank you. So I don't know if that helps or not, but there are some options for council to consider. And I really think these community centers are going to need some help. I don't think there's any question with that. And folks here belong to all of them. Councillor Porter, please.
Your worship, if we went countywide, we could probably cut that in half or a quarter, take it down to like a quarter of a cent or half a cent, and be dispersed amongst all the community centers, because they also serve as warming centers and so on when we have hazards, things going on or power outages and so on. So it'd be nice if it was countywide as a tax base, and then, as you said, dispersed to the ones in need.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Great.
Yeah, just
Mr. Hare,
yeah, thank you. Thank you, your worship. Just a comment on the councilor's comment. The challenge there is a penny raises $180,000, and that's not much money when we start dividing that into the number of organizations and community halls. So to consider even cutting that doesn't leave much money to distribute. That's the only challenge I see to that, or a piece of information I want to contribute to that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll say this, and maybe I don't think there's any question as a council. We talked about this. We want to do something to help our community centers. So I think that's kind of an obvious thing. That's why we asked for the work to be done. I don't think the answer needs to be decided today. Councilor Raymond, you just said that folks are now starting to question about it. So we need to make sure we get this right. We're going to have additional costs when we get into our budgeting process coming this winter or early spring that we'll have to consider as well. And maybe that's the time where we look at this issue and say, we want to budget, well, 1 cent is about 180, 2 cents is 360, whatever it is. And then that helps us understand how many community centers we have and how we disperse that money. And I think for Wallace's sake, Councilor Revin, I think you and I heard that night, they're looking for help. And I mentioned Councilor Porter, his association, his area is going to be facing the exact same thing. They need help. And I think that's reflected around the whole county. So I think it's probably something as a council we need to give some good thought to and decide how we want to approach it. So we're not doing one this month, one next month, 3 months, we're at it again. And I don't think that's fair to your folks either, Amy, to expect that. So I don't know, does that kind of make sense? And we'll make this part of our budgetary process and decide. Councilor Revin, please.
I think that is, because we couldn't deal with them on a
No.
month basis, it would have to be year to year.
Year to year.
So, because your tax rate is set.
Good point.
So,
Yeah, great. Yeah.
We have to come up with a decision during our budget process.
Absolutely.
Shelley.
Shelley. One more. time.
Yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments or questions in regards to this issue?
I think,
Councilor Gilroy, please. Yeah.
in my district, originally we had 3 when I started, and now we're down to 2. And we lost one in Shinnemacas because of no volunteers and no ability to fundraise and whatever. But the other side of that too was that going forward, are we going to put money into a building that has nothing going on? No programs, no continuing, like that. The other 2 halls that I have in Northport and in Tidnish have daily programming, things going on every week, every week, all year long. So at some point, that was why when we made the decision, Shinnemacas, what can we do? Fold up the tent, sell the building and go home, because there's nobody to run the programs either. So, you know, like if there's programs that the village of Wallace and other community halls, I don't think we, you know, it's a big discussion here because we don't want to pay to run buildings that are going to sit empty and nothing be done with them. It's not fair to the taxpayers and it's not fair to force communities to try and do something with their buildings if there's nobody there to do it. It's a sad fact of the way things are going in this day and age, I think. So there's a big discussion to be had, I think. So.
Absolutely right, Councilor Gilroy. And the other, so if you think about it, it may become the grant processing process where maybe this year you might come forward and say, no, this community center does need to be considered because they're, for whatever reason, they decided not to continue to function. So it might be an annual thing where you have to actually enter in a process where you determine which ones are part of that year and which aren't. I don't know, Councilor Evans, but just a suggestion around, maybe a suggestion for a motion would be that to direct staff to send a letter to the Wallace Community Center Society with the relevant information as well as information on the process that we're following, something like that. Would that you okay with that? I think we should respond to them. They've sent the letter to us. Probably should respond, even though we're doing it publicly. We should still respond to them. So you okay with that motion?
Yes.
Moved by Councilor Redmond, seconded by Councilor Hotelling. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Amy, very much. Appreciate your work.
Thanks.
That brings us down to number 5, external reports, which we do not have any. 6 is internal updates, reports from committee. So we're going to start with 6.1 solid waste, the monthly report. Justin speaking to this or Mr. Walker, are you speaking to this or you don't have to? You're not.
Forward any questions council has.
Thank you.
The solid waste administrator.
Any questions for Mr. Walcrest? Thank you, sir. 6.2 Fire Service Review Committee update. Mr. Cole, Director of Protective Services.
Just if I could, your worship,
Yeah.
while Al's taking his place there, I think it's worthwhile highlighting in the solid waste report that after a number of years, finally, we're getting to the place where the government is going to begin to implement EPR. While we don't know exactly necessarily what that means and what it looks like yet, I think it's something that we need to keep on our radar and focus our interest and read on. So just to highlight that, it's in the report. So
thank you. Oh, Councilor Telling, sorry.
Just to add to that, I'm the chair for the Northern Region Solid Waste and on regional chairs, and we just recently had a meeting on EPR talking about that municipalities do have to make a choice whether they are in or out for EPR by January 1st. So that is something that's coming up soon, and we'll have more information coming to council soon, but it's a discussion that has to come up.
Thank you, Councilor Telling.
it's actually an information session at 4 o'clock this afternoon that we're missing because we're here. So
Thank you, Councilor Telling. Mr. Cole, please.
Your worship, thank you. As council is well aware, the fire service review recommended a number of changes to the implementation of the delivery of fire services in Cumberland County or in the municipality. And council directed staff to explore what was known on the Goudreau report as the hub model of fire service. And an ad hoc committee was formed to explore those options. The mandate of the committee was to review the delivery of fire service protection services and provide feedback and recommendations to council. To date, the committee has held 4 meetings. March 1, March 21, May 8, and August 29. The next meeting is next week on Tuesday of next week. So the results of the committee meetings to date were primarily in relation to support for the hub model of fire service. The fire review committee was unanimous in that support. There were a number of changes to, or there were some changes to the terms of reference which were amended. The Shinnemakas Fire Department was substituted or removed as a hub station and substituted by Trumanville And there were a number of other small changes that were recommended in relation to the draft bylaws. And I apologize, Your Worship, the version of the briefing that's in this package refers to the bylaws being appended. They were removed from this briefing so that there could be a further review and of the bylaws between the CAO and myself. And there were a few changes made as a result of that, and those bylaws will be circulated to the review committee likely tomorrow. So in essence, a recap of what's happened so far is there are 4 support hub stations: Parsboro, Spring Hill, Trumanville, and Pugwash. 3 of those are in the largest urban centers, while Trumanville is a support hub primarily due to its geographic location. The hubs are, the largest departments. The exception to that is the Wallace Fire Department, which is by volunteers the largest in the municipality, but its geographic location in the extreme east edge of the municipality precluded it from acting as a support hub. We now refer to the non-support hub stations as local fire stations, which is better terminology than was contained in the Fire Review Committee report. And the categorization of the capabilities of the various stations is a reflection of what the actual capabilities of those departments are, based primarily on their own reporting and registration documentation. So I'll leave it at that unless there's any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Cole in regards to his report? I will say on behalf of members of the committee, I'm sure in council, I want to thank you for all your work on this. It's been it's a great effort, and you deserve a lot of credit for bringing fire chiefs together. The issue forward, the council decided in regards to the hub issue and all the work that goes with that. I know it's been a lot of work for you, but I think I would echo the comments of all the councilors here to say we thank you very much for your great work. It's appreciated. It's a big issue for everybody. Fire service, very important to us, as you know, and we thank you for your great work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I should say that the representatives of the support hub stations on the committee have been invaluable to the progress that the committee's made, and they should be definitely recognized and appreciated.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. 6.3 Administration Department Monthly Report. Shelley, you? No. McCracken.
Thank you, Your Worship. So these reports, just as a reminder, span over the summer essentially, since our last regular committee of the whole meeting. So from June to August. So what seems like old news is a couple months ago is included in the reports as well. So letters and checks to county general grant recipients were sent in June. And as you can see from the photos, we had several check presentations as well. You've got a table there to the end of August, I believe, that outlines the budget remaining for your respective district grants budgets. We hired approximately 10 new staff in this time, including some key positions within the organization. Also, we have a few outstanding positions currently being advertised, and we're already scheduled interviews for municipal planner later in the month. Draft of our new personnel manual is almost complete, and as well as our position descriptions, which we've been revising. And our asset management plan is almost complete, and management will review this with a goal of bringing a plan or a draft of the plan to council very, very soon. And the preliminary review of the bylaw and policies, including a list of recommended policies to maintain, change, create, new or repeal, is almost complete as well. So lots of big pieces of the all hands on deck work are coming to ahead here, which is great news. Also in your package is customer service statistics. So building development permits, bin replacements and grants lead the way in terms of customer service requests. Communication highlights, of course, our first edition of the newsletter was published. So we're also looking at an internal sort of staff newsletter to keep our communications internally going. And our corporate communications officer, Daryl Cole, is working on that. Our new website it was sort of soft launch. We're going to do a more formal launch sometime in the future. We're just sort of fine tuning the information. We're constantly finding little pieces of information updates. And once we think we have it at a great place, we'll do a more formal launch. But I think it looks really nice. It's easy to navigate, and we've had some good response from folks. Of course, Daryl Cole has been very busy with articles and photos and proclamations, flag raisings and such. So very busy out in the road, telling the story of Cumberland County. In terms of IT, there were over 300 IT help desk requests in those 3 months. Many of them small requests around or seemingly minor requests around email and printer related, as well as phones, computers and such. And you can see the graph of the number of tickets per month there. And we've done a cybersecurity audit, and we're rolling out the two-factor authentication, which is also applies to council's computers and phones and such as well. So if you got the notice to do your two-factor, make sure you do that. We'll be doing a check-in on who's done that and who hasn't. When Evan returns, we'll make sure we catch up with those folks who haven't done it yet. For me. So we also began a preliminary implementation of anti-phishing software program, which will help secure our network against phishing emails. So we get several cyber security risky phishing emails throughout the month. And in general, staff are good at reporting those, but this program will tighten our security in that regard. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments for Mr. McCracken in regards to his report? Seeing none, I just have one before you get away, Peter. So we're still advertising for a planner, and I know that's an important role in this municipality.
Yes.
Are we having any success, you think, from respondents or?
It's difficult, like every other municipality. If you go on the A-Man's employments page, you'll see a number of planner positions advertised there. So I think so it's a tough market. A, it's hard to find planners to begin with. B, a lot of people are looking for planners now. Good news is we have several interviews scheduled for later this month for planners with some good resumes in front of us. So we're hopeful we'll find somebody out of that batch.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate your report. Thank you, sir. Thanks to you and your staff. 6.4 Development and Planning Department, a monthly report. Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon. The report again is in your package. As Peter just noted, we are in the process, continue with interviews and hiring for the community planner. So hopeful we're, I think, interviewing 6 candidates next week. So that's been a positive outcome, and thanks to Peter and Kelly for advancing that with some other outreaches that I think stimulates more applications. We continue to use Brighter Communities Planning and Consulting Group to assist us with our planning applications. The collaborative work with them has resulted in us advancing several of our rezoning applications. And thank you to the members of council for holding a special session on August 30th that allows us to advance 2 specific applications that are noted in your report, one in Parsboro and one at the Gulf Shore. They're also supporting negotiations with our first development agreements for wind farm developments. I anticipate bringing those forward to council this fall. They are our first agreements for wind farms. They're for the two applications that have been through the public process as far as environmental assessments and community public open houses under the EA assessment process. We're just being very diligent, very detailed in our work with those two companies to make sure we're aligning things because they are our first agreements in respect to the wind farms. There's positives around all of that work in respect to renewable energy, but we also have to make sure we anticipate and work closely on any potential land use challenges. We have some additional applications that are in process right now, so we're going to probably see a very heavy year in rezonings and development agreements in general. Again, we have the rezoning was given a first reading on August 30th for the Palscallion application for Wentworth area. And we have our scheduled public meeting as noted in the package for September 27th. At that time, we'll bring forward another application for first reading with council. There was a decision to just move that directly to council. So your report does talk about it being discussed today, but the matter will come directly to council for first reading next week. I had already mentioned the planning application. Permanent inspections continue to see high volume. If you can look at your chart in your data, you'll see that the month of July was almost double the previous year. So again, we're still seeing that high spike of volume with council support. And again, thanking council for their and also to our senior management team for supporting bringing the building officials, contracted building officials that were mentioned earlier by CAO Harrod. That's allowed us to close the gap on some of the inspections and the work that has to happen in the field, which is what the contracted members are doing. And that's opening up our staff to be able to process plans and applications internally in the office. So that's been very, very significant. We're still up about 13% year over year as of end of August. But noting that some folks have said to me, well, 13% doesn't sound like a lot of growth, but we're up 30% over the previous year, which was 48% the year previous, which was almost double the year previous. So if you can follow the math and follow the charts, it's pretty significant volume that's still happening. It's a positive thing for the municipality, but we also have to think that we have to also look at the challenges of servicing that requirement. Our GIS analyst continues to be busy because of that high volume of permitting, because that translates into increased work for civic addressing. And I know they've been supporting projects, including the continued work on asset management, as well as been supporting myself and now Nicole, our new economic development officer, working on some surplus property files, as well as the highway signage project for Fort Lawrence. I'm going to jump to climate change and special projects. Still working on the broadband internet project. We have had some discussions directly with Colchester County, and we're working with ExploreNet to get a more detailed update that we'll bring to council this fall. We had a working session with the geothermal project that both Councillor Hotelling and your worship attended at the community college last week. It was a very successful update from the team that's working with natural resources, as well as our project coordinator, Mr. Kelly. Staff have applied for, and I think this was noted in previous reports, but we officially applied for two programs or two applications under the low carbon communities program. One was for the update to our green energy and climate action plan. And the second was a joint application that was mentioned previously, but just want to let folks know that the formal application for the utility scale solar project was applied for as part of that program. And that's a joint project done with actually the town of Truro. And that was suggested to us through our contact at area organization. New economic development officer, Nicole, I mentioned earlier, she's now with us. She's a strong background in corporate finance. She's quickly adapting to her new role. Nicole is now a permanent resident back in the county. She grew up here, so happy to have her. And she's working on surplus properties, the special highway signage project, as well as she's been networking with the Cumberland Development Business Group, as well as Cumberland, now the Cumberland Chamber of Commerce, as well as a community business connector. And other than the stats at the bottom of the report, the other significant thing I'd like to mention, our deputy CEO mentioned it earlier that we have been engaged with two groups within the Mi'kmaq community and organizations and supporting us in looking at bringing elements into our park in Parsboro that will respect design but help ensure it's a welcoming and inclusive space, and to be able to recognize and implement elements that will support that inclusiveness, but also bring elements of the Mi'kmaq culture into the park. So, Your Worship, there's about a mouthful there for sure. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. A lot of great work going on there, and it's great to see on behalf of the councilors. Thank you. Councillor Gould, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. You probably know what I'm going to ask you about.
Yes, sir.
Been in now over 3 years and I've been involved on a committee that's never met. And it's a border committee. And one of the topics has been this highway signage project. And my hope is that we can finally get an answer. And I know it has moved along quite well since you've joined us. So I thank you for that, that we could get an answer fairly soon. My hope is that we would be able to finally have a committee meeting in the winter and maybe see something happen in the spring. Is that something that's possible?
Your Worship, back to Councillor Gould. Several things have advanced. The only thing that is really stopping us from bringing the matter back to council to get the signage regulations in place has been the approval from the Minister of Public Works, Provincial Minister of Public Works. CEO O'Hara is pushing forward to get that final response. Our response that we got during the summer is essentially we weren't going to hear anything until early to mid-September to get that through. I did mention that Nicole's been working on the project. We've actually had interaction with the town of Amherst Economic Development as well, because there is a component of it that does impact them. But we have mapped out all of the locations. I have actually talked to some signage owners within that network, or that entryway into our community and into the town of Amherst as well. And we are working with a group an individual that we have contract work with, and to look at some options on actually being ready for the signage discussion potentially with the committee. So, but Your Worship, if there's additional questions, happy to do them. We're slowly making progress. And once we have that commitment or approval, I should say, from the minister's office, then we'll be able to advance a lot quicker.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
Thank you. Yeah, and I believe tomorrow there's a thing in Pugwash, isn't it, with the council chambers doing something about tourism.
Yep.
And putting in some recommendations. So certainly that would help make it a little more attractive, especially for those who pull off to the visitor center. Rather than going back on the highway, if it's a little cleaner going down through there in the signage department, and it might be a little more attractive for them to keep going straight and not go directly to the highway. So hopefully we can get this moving forward, and I thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Gould.
Your Worship, back to Councillor Gould. The one thing we are looking at in the initial parts is we have the existing rest stop that's there with 4 major signage components that are a bit out of date. And that would be one of the things that we look at to utilize existing infrastructure so we can do more without expending on new signage basis. So lots more to come, but certainly appreciate your patience, and we've been slowly moving forward. It'd be nothing would please me more than have the regulations in place, and we'll be looking to assign an administrator for that. And right now that looks like it'll be our new economic development officer, Nicole.
Thank you.
Councillor Gould. Thank you. Thank you, Boone. Any other questions for Mr. Boone? Seeing none, thank you very much for your report. Thank you for the work. We appreciate it. Thank you, Glenn. 6.5 Finance Department Monthly Report. Director of Finance.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report is in your package. This is for June, July, and August. So the first part of the report is just confirming all bank reconciliations for the months are complete. All payroll remittances are complete. So everything's caught up there. There's the property tax table showing the aging for the last 4+ years. Taxes were due on July 14th. The collection rate for the current taxes is 87.6% compared to 86.5% in 2022. So we're up a little bit, which is good. There was a tax sale held on July 12th. There were a total of 68 properties that had notices initially mailed to them. And on the day of the sale, there were 29 of 34 that were sold, including the 5 you would recall we set minimum bids on. Those all sold. So that was great. Our next tax sale is scheduled for November 9th, 2023, with a total of 20 accounts, a smaller sale because it's so close to the last one. But yeah, we have 20 accounts with notices mailed to them, including the 5 that were adjourned at the July 12th tax sale. The current outstanding balance for these accounts is about 137,000. Year end, so the finance department has provided the auditors with the information and the audit work is in progress. And water utilities. So at August 31st, 2023, we had about 65,000 outstanding. All water bills for the first quarter, April to June, were mailed in July. And we mailed 72 water disconnection notices in June, delivered 32 door hangers on Wednesday, July 5th, and did a few disconnections in the last week of July, but not too many. So that's my update on finance. And if there are any questions, I will entertain them.
Thank you. Any questions for Director of Finance? See none. Must have done a great job, Amy. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you for your work. 6.6 Protective Service Department and Facilities Monthly Report. For Cole.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is June through till August. As everyone would have recalled, the summer was full of significant rainfall in Cumberland County, although Hurricane Franklin did miss us. And none of the significant impacts that were felt in the southern part of the province impacted Cumberland County. The Emergency Management Office was involved in evacuation planning exercises at East Cumberland Lodge. And then there were interjurisdictional alert ready meetings in August, where the new alert ready procedures and forms were presented. For fire services, there were 366 callouts during the 3 months covered in this report. And 162 of those were medical and motor vehicle callouts, which amounts to 44% of all the calls. By contrast, structure fires amounted to 0.02% of callouts. Spring Hill and Parsboro are still the busiest of all fire departments. 2 new rescue trucks have been ordered for Westchester and Advocate fire departments, with delivery expected before the end of the year. The statistical tables for the 3 months covered in this report are on pages 50 and 51 of the report. And regarding bylaw activities, there were 86 green bins delivered in the 3 months covered. There were 24 dangerous and unsightly complaints that were investigated. 2 demolitions were completed. 1 property cleanup was completed in Spring Hill by a combination of Public Works and a private contractor. There were a number of other cleanups that were completed by property owners without orders or private contractors having to be engaged by the municipality. September, well, this month, we have a number of demolition applications that will be coming before council, and a number of cleanup orders that have been issued. The statistics for the year-to-date statistics for bylaw are on page 51. Happy to take any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments for Mr. Cole in regards to his report? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate your work and your staff. Thank you. Yep. 6.7 Public Works Department monthly report. What was mine? Watercress.
Thank you, Your Worship. Anyone's driven into Spring Hill lately, they've seen some of the stuff we've been up to this summer. Capital projects we've been quite busy with, the Junction Road infrastructure upgrades is trucking right along. You can see some photos there in your package. You're wondering why they're going slow coming up the hill there by the recycling depot. There's a rolling strip mine. But the contractor's been sticking with it throughout some tough weather conditions and some interesting soil conditions, and been doing a good job and being engaged with us and making sure we're informed and working with the consultants. So trending right now at the last schedule update, they're on task to be substantially complete on October 31st. And of course, we get 5 weeks of rain between now and then. Won't be anything we do about that, but we're optimistic that we'll be meeting those targets. As well on Athol Road, the bulk of the main distribution system is in. They're working to finalize the service laterals this week. We'll start reinstating the roads there. Capital paving program was completed in late June, early July this year. And we have, with the Public Works Group, done some subgrade preparation, site work, and laid the gravels in the Spring Hill parking lot, and have done a change order to the paving project to include the paving as part of the activities that will be done by Cumberland Paving. A special note, the Public Works Group in Spring Hill has also worked on the Lamb Cabin Park, and apart from growing some grass, it's nearly ready for an unveiling later this fall. Pretty proud of the work they did there, and I'm pleased we're able to do some achievement with that. And we have a laundry list of some of the other activities in the report, and happy to answer any questions council may have, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Watercress. Any questions or comments from Mr. Watercress in regards to his report? Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not a question, it's a big thank you. Thank you to you and your staff and Fred Arsenault for the great work that you did with the Lamb Cabin Memorial Park. And I can't wait for October the 23rd to actually have the interpretive signs up in it to be for the public to come and see it, and councillors. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Anyone else? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your support. Appreciate all your work. Thank you very much. 6.8 Recreation and Community Services Department monthly report. Mr. McCracken.
Thank you, Your Worship. Also wanted to mention that Recreation Department, just a reminder, the recreation work with our director, Ali, off on maternity leave has been sort of split between myself and Director Cole. I believe there's another part of his report in the package, the facilities report. So perhaps we could call our Director Cole up after I'm finished here, if we could. Thank you. Recreation strategy. So council identified rural recreation as a priority in our planning session back in January. We also have an obligation with our provincial colleagues through the Municipal Physical Activity Leadership Program to develop a strategy. So we're combining the two, and we've met with the province on aiding with this strategy, and we hope to have an RFP ready to be issued by the end of the month to hire a consultant to help with the plan. Summer programming went really well this year. I think that's a testament to our new recreation programmer, Nick Leopold, as well as our excellent summer staff, and many of which are younger. And so we hope to have a lot of them back next year, which bodes well for future programming. As you can see from the statistics on page 64, I think most of our core programming and 65, most of our core programming was at 100% capacity or 80% capacity, depending on the week, 80 or above most weeks. So great turnout in all three key locations, as well as our mini camps. Our new T-ball program went well, and our bike rodeos were good, although we had some weather to deal with in Spring Hill. Of course, the community center is hopping with activity all the time, and roller derby to public health mobile testing to plays to softball tournaments to wrestling and Murray Day, Old Home Week, and so on. Place is super busy throughout the year. And our staff do a great job hosting and being a great support for those community activities. Of course, we have our teen center, it continues to operate. Happy to say that we have Paisanos coming back as our canteen operator. And so they provide a great service and they'll be back again this year. And both the Blues and the coal miners have agreed, as you know, to their respective contracts. Our first day of ice rentals was on the 6th, and Cumberland County Blues began their training camp, and they've started their games as well. And coal miners will start their training camp on the 30th and have some exhibition and regular season games scheduled as well. And then we have, of course, minor hockey will be starting very soon, tryouts very soon, and full swing in October. Some capital and maintenance updates there, including replacing a well pump, new tractor, receiving bids for that, as well as an LED electronic sign. The Lions Park basketball court, still a dip in the dip in the paved surface was repaired. We're still working on a solution for the lights. Well, we have a solution. We're waiting for a permit from Nova Scotia Power. But once we get that permit, electrician can hook those lights up. Quotes for the kitchen upgrades are well underway. Actually, very soon we should be making a recommendation for that. And playground inspections. And we received some money through the province for the installation of 3-way valves on our ice cubes and cleaning the evaporators and condensers, installing swing check valves. If you ask me any of the details of those, I'll have to get you the answers later. But we got some money for that work in our ice plant. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments from Mr. McCracken, Councilor McCormick?
Thank you, Worship. I just have one question, an update on the display case that houses the Carnegie Medal. If we're going to put some lighting into it, or what's?
Yes,
Thank
Your
you.
Worship.
Mr. McCracken, please.
Good news there. We have a lighting solution, so there'll be a light in it. We're waiting for a part, a small transformer that will hook the light into the pot lights that are currently there. So when you come in the door and you turn on the pot lights, it'll all automatically illuminate the case. So we don't have to remember to do it. It'll be automatically on when the pot lights are on. So hopefully that should be taken care of in a short matter of time.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from Mr. McCracken? Seeing none, thank you, sir, very much for your work, and thank you to your staff. The last item on our agenda, number 7, the information item. So there's a housing letter from our Cumberland North MLA to council and staff, myself and council. So I hope you had the opportunity to review that. So a recommended motion that somebody would consider it would be that we direct our CAO to prepare a response to our Cumberland North MLA to her letter, please. Moved by Councillor Gilroy, second by Councillor Porter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you.
The facilities report.
Did I miss one?
Yeah. Because he and Peter are splitting up that Ally's jobs. So it's just the facilities section of it.
Okay, so I guess, Mr. Cole, you're going to speak to the facilities part of the report?
Yes,
Good. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Your Worship.
Yes, sir.
The facilities portion of the report is on page 52 of the package. Regarding the campground, June was a difficult month due to poor weather, but there were 261 campers that arrived throughout the month, whereas in July there were 1,019, and in August, the busiest month the campgrounds ever had from the records I've been able to find, there were just under 1,500 people went through the campground, which was an increase of 52% over the prior year, August 2021. The work has begun on the construction of the washroom facilities at the campground. The slab is in and the underground plumbing is in as well. In Cape Door, the shingles on the guest house and restaurant were completed. And the installation of the report, your worship, says vault toilets. That's actually a flush toilet facility with a hand washing station. Work on that will commence at the end of the tourist season. The Mechanic Street splash pad is complete, and there's a photograph of it on page 53. Pugwash Library is also complete. The issue with the electric vehicle charger has, I'm told, been remedied. Parsboro Ball Field is complete and 2 new dugouts are completed. The Spring Hill Basketball Court is complete, waiting only on a permit from Nova Scotia Power to put in lighting. And the painting on the exterior of the Parsboro Library is underway. That's it for facilities, your worship.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Any questions for Mr. Cole in regards to that portion of his report? Being none? Gary's not there. Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. So I'd ask for motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Gilroy. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, folks. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks to everybody.
Thank whoever made the agenda up, to make it easier on staff so they can do all the report.